And now, without further ado, we would like to introduce our very first speaker of the day and one of her keynotes, Rebecca Weekly. Rebecca Weekly leads the organization that influences every aspect of Intel's cloud platform solutions. Rebecca is a vice president, general manager, and the senior principal engineer at Intel, as well as an Open Compute Project board member, and is on Fortune's 40 Under 40 list of most influential people in technology. She'll be going over her journey to VP as well as the future of cloud. We have a short, more moderated Q&A session, and we're also opening up a Q&A session to the audience. So please feel free to throw some questions in the chat and we'll get to them at the end. Now, please welcome Rebecca Weekly.
Hello, everyone. I can't believe I'm just so excited to be here with you. I still remember the first day I joined my computer science and electrical engineering classes. It was daunting, to say the least. There was a lot in front of me, and I can't even fathom, honestly, how I went from there to here. But we'll talk a little bit about it as we chat today. And I know that there's a moderated chat at the end. Anybody who knows me well knows I deeply prefer interactive conversations. So feel free to chat. I'm looking at the window too. And I'm sure Seema will make sure, and Asifa will make sure that we get to have a conversation together. Okay, let's jump in. So Seema asked me to really kind of talk to you a little bit more about my personal journey in coming to this industry, this business. So I'll start there and kind of let you know a little bit about how I randomly came from being a total nerd with headgear that loved computer science and electrical engineering and fixing robots when I was a little girl to running one of the largest and actually fastest growing businesses at Intel. I started not really knowing much about computer science or electrical engineering. My dad's a doctor. My mom stayed home and raised a very large family of children, of which I am the youngest. And I really didn't know much other than I always liked to take things apart. That was about it. And I actually was lucky enough to grow up in this very multidisciplinary family. I took dance lessons and did theater and really had no idea what I wanted to be when I grew up. There's no doubt in my mind about that. I really wanted, actually, around 10, 11, 12, I decided I was going to be a professional dancer. I was studying very actively to do that. I traveled all over the world. I interviewed for things. Well, they don't call it interviewing at that point. They call it auditioning to try and do this, and landed professional gigs and was very, very excited about it. And then I realized somewhere in that journey that it was less about what I knew and more about how I looked. And did I fit the right costume, and was I good enough? But then everything else was sort of externalities I couldn't control. And then I realized I was lucky enough to really be good at math and science. And so, gosh, wouldn't it be interesting to follow a journey that played to those skills? So I came back, from that journey to my normal schooling, and I was lucky enough to attend this, kind of engineering awareness project that my teacher had recommended I take at HPE, which was, very close to where I grew up in Sacramento. And I spent a couple of weekends there, and really in that environment, I met a lot of other people who got excited about technology and building things and solving problems. But the person who was my first mentor, her name was Grace, was, a mom of two who worked from home 2 days a week at HP, and really talked about this lifetime of learning that she had committed to by studying engineering, and how exciting that was to solve problems for people, but to also be the kind of mom that she wanted to be. And that was it. That was like, someone just hit a button and said, yep, I can do this, and I can still be home for dinner, and I can still be with my family, and I can still be the person I want to be, and also change the world. And I think that's really what's most powerful about being an engineer. And I would say this is true of all engineering firms and all engineering capabilities, But I honestly, truly, deeply believe in tech specifically, and in the area of computer science and electrical engineering, we have the ability to transform by connecting others. And what we are able to do is unfathomable to people who lived 100 years ago. And honestly, I'm excited to be a part of what people 100 years from now will look back and say, oh, that was the information revolution. That was when we completely changed the game for the world. So my excitement about life and my excitement about my work go hand in hand, but my journey didn't start because I was so in love with technology. And I think a lot of people say, oh, you know, I knew it. I knew I wanted to be an engineer from the minute I grew up. No, I always had a thing for tech, but I wanted to be a ballerina. I wanted to be everything under the sun. And I came full journey to this through loving people and wanting to make a difference. Okay, let's go to the next one. So I really, my professional journey, I went to college at MIT, the hardest thing I ever did. No doubt in my mind. Folks, everybody who's studying engineering right now, it doesn't matter where you study it, it is hard. You are changing your mindset to become a different person, to think about problems in a different way. And that is a philosophical change. And it's one that will affect you for the rest of your life. When I went to MIT, I looked like so few other people. Electrical engineering at the time was 19% female. The computer science department was 22% female. The numbers, unfortunately, haven't moved nearly as much as I would like them to. I felt very awkward. There were people who were there who had been programming since they were children, and I wasn't that person. I wasn't raised by an engineer. So it was very hard, and it was a very big transition. And going from, you know, being the smartest person in your class in high school and feeling really very secure about that to, wow, I need to learn a lot. I don't know. Taught a very resilient mindset, I think, and really just coming back and orienting to first principles. And that is the most important part of my education that I learned. Everything you're going to learn right now in college is interesting and necessary, and it will be not irrelevant, but not as central to your job in 5 years. And it won't be as central to your job in the next 5 years. You're constantly, when you start this journey of engineering, you are committing to a lifetime of learning. That is the best part of it, because every new problem is going to teach you something that you have to know to solve that situation and to move forward. So it is my favorite part. You're learning how to learn right now. And that is the most important part on this journey, because it will never stop. When I started my first job, I had no idea what I was going to do. I came out and worked for SGI. Silicon Graphics at the time was both a MIPS-based processor company as well as a graphics company, as well as an I/O company. I mean, really did some fascinating work in the space of Numalink, which continues to be one of the I/O interfaces that I think was most innovative and interesting for the ecosystem. And I loved it. I learned so much. It was such a great culture of people. I moved from there to ATI, which you might not even know of anymore, but it was a graphics company that was purchased by AMD. After that, I went into Synopsys, which is an electronic design automation firm. And I really learned there how to help people do verification and validation of systems across so many different use cases, from spaces in semiconductors like Cisco and Juniper, where they were doing networking solutions and ASICs, through to processors and customized solutions in the processor space in the cloud. And that was when I got pregnant, I had a baby, and my entire worldview changed. I had been traveling all the time, going to manufacturing sites in Taiwan. And I realized as I was investigating how to ship breast milk home on dry ice from Korea, that maybe this wasn't what I wanted to do with my life in this new phase of having a small child. So I went back to my reason. And my reason for being here is to help people and to still be true to myself. And so I had the opportunity to transition to Intel. I had the opportunity, at the time I was running a team, I had to go back to being an individual contributor, which felt like a step back in my career, but it was not a step back in my learning. And at Intel, I really was able to take this opportunity to bring together what I had learned working across a wide swath of semiconductor companies and focus it on an end user, which was really cloud service providers, and try to bring it together. And I was able to take the background I had in graphics and the background I had in processors and the background I had from a connectivity perspective into this portfolio of solutions, and then take the product management experience that I had built in my last years at Synopsys to start really understanding how people were using our products, testing those theories, and really moving forward to drive changes in our portfolio across for our customers. So it was a fascinating journey. Again, optimized for the learning and for who I wanted to be, and had no idea what that would mean for my career. Honestly, I probably am the worst person to talk about optimizing for career, because every single time I've always optimized for my personal learning and my ability to have an impact in the world. And what I learned in coming over and working with cloud customers was just a fascinating space. When you talk about the cloud, you know, people have some other concept of what it is, but and yes, ATI was used in the Wii. That was actually one of the projects I worked on, was the graphics chip that went into the Wii, the first Nintendo Wii, and it was a really cool. I still have a Wii in my garage somewhere that has, you know, made by ATI and my name on it. So it was a really cool experience. When I went into Intel and worked with these customers, I started learning what it means to operate at hyperscale. And it's a totally different world. When you have 8 million servers up across 385 availability zones in the ecosystem, and the world runs on you as a backbone, that world runs on Intel. 93% of those servers are Intel servers. And we have a huge responsibility, both in the design and development of those servers, in the tuning and optimization of them, in delivering performance security solutions for them, so that users don't have to choose between, do I want to have encrypted data and do I want to have a performance service for my end user? I've learned so much about the domain space on systems, in power and cooling innovation, in how we need to look at algorithms from an total cost of ownership perspective, to understand the variance in performance for workloads at scale. I've learned everything you could possibly learn about systems downtime and how to root cause quickly, how to do VM migration and solutions. It is a huge world of operations at scale. I've learned a lot about the domain space's memory, both from a reliability perspective, and the typical things that tend to break down in a server. Memory isn't first, tends to be hard drives, then you might have some flakiness in your NIC, but memory is right up there in terms of uncorrectable errors that lead to those blue screens you're probably used to on your PC. On your PC, you can often restart. When you're in the cloud, that's not an acceptable situation. So how do we do migration at scale? How do we get more predictive in our analytics for when things are going to come down? And probably the most interesting and recent work that we've been doing as an ecosystem is around sustainability. And when you think about the ICT market, you know, the integrated circuit technology market, we account for, I'm going to get the statistic wrong, I think. Let me make sure I don't. By 2030, there are reports that indicate that this market will account for 30% of the world's consumed carbon. That is a major responsibility, and honestly, a pretty terrifying one. It's because the world is consuming computation so quickly, and it means we have a huge responsibility to deliver efficient solutions to our market. And we can talk about carbon that is generated in the production of our products. And that is work that we've taken, you know, aggressive goals on. We recycle 80% of the water that's used in our manufacturing processes today. We will continue to improve that domain space over time. Our goal is to get to 100%, but it's more than that. 70% of the carbon is actually in the operations of data centers. CPU is only so much of that. We have so much work to do as an industry. That takes consortiums, that takes so much work. So we have a lot of work to do in this domain space. We have a committed ecosystem to drive. And I think some of the most interesting and innovative things that we will do as an industry are going to be in the domain space of doing it smart for all of our people who want to live and breathe in this world moving forward. So I'm very passionate about that work, really, truly. And that's been true of my OCP time. We have a major initiative with the Open Compute project in this domain space, and also very true at Intel and what we're doing with our customers directly at Intel. So even though I've been working in the cloud industry for 10 years and trying to deliver better products for cloud for 10 years, 2020 completely shifted the narrative of cloud computing. When you look at the pandemic and how it affected us, remote work certainly is a thing. I'm speaking to you obviously from a Zoom call, and this is remote learning, remote work has completely shifted in terms of the flexibility that people want, the work-life balance that people want. 54% of all CFOs are saying remote work is going to be a permanent option. Doesn't mean we'll all be there, and there's certainly difficult conversations that are always best had in person, but I think we have a lot of people who are looking at this flexibility and appreciating it. Digital acceleration, how cloud computing is happening. We have changed in every domain space here. People who never would have come to the cloud to buy their groceries didn't feel safe entering a grocery store and bought it through e-commerce, largest growth area out of the pandemic. But digital video consumption too was already a fairly large industry in the cloud and has only grown. And there will be so much more that has changed about consumer behavior that people found convenient and will continue to find convenient. Edge build out, 5G build out accelerated in the pandemic for so many areas in which people cut spending, but in that domain space, people understand remote connectivity is that much more important in a world where people are disconnected from seeing each other face to face. And of course, artificial intelligence. This is, not a new trend. I'm sure you guys have heard all about it, but 85% of businesses, you collect a ton of data. Companies collect so much data. They actually don't do that much with it. Only 3% of the data that is collected by most enterprises is processed. If you collect that data and you don't actually collect any insights out of it, turns out you didn't really do much other than create a very large storage bill. So I think businesses are increasingly looking at how do they get more insights out of the data they collect. There's so much great work in this domain space from business intelligence companies and CRM services, and so much more that we will continue to see in the domain space of manufacturing, retail, that are completely shifting how we process and manage data. And I think one of the most interesting things in that domain space will be with privacy. We have a lot of work to do as an industry to make sure that we don't normalize this information in a way that disenfranchises people, doesn't allow them to be them full selves. And AI has quite a bit of challenge in that domain space. So probably one of the most interesting things I've been able to do here running this business in this phase of my career has been our Xeon Scalable Processor launch that just happened a few weeks ago. And it's not the processor. I mean, the processor is awesome and exciting and whatever, but for me, what I do, it's actually taking a piece of silicon and turning real end user workloads into a better experience. So there's a lot of different areas in which we've been able to partner with our customers. Something that's very unique about our Xeon processors is they have these built-in accelerators. And one that we talk about a lot is DL Boost. DL Boost is an AI accelerator. And then also we have crypto acceleration that's built into the processor. Why does crypto matter? Well, security matters just about everywhere. Every single time you log in on one of these devices into a website of any variety, or just render a DOM through a mobile app, that is a secure SSL handshake. That is something that the web runs on. If you do an e-commerce transaction, even more so. So accelerating our ability to do crypto at scale everywhere in general purpose compute is critical. what I find fascinating, and this journey is consistent. You guys can go back and read, guys, gals, everyone can go back and read what was written in the 1960s as we started sort of exploring distributed compute through mainframe systems. You're constantly in this interesting space of workloads are hard and they're computationally intense. You identify that workload, you start to specialize hardware to address that workload. And then there's such a ubiquity of that workload, you realize, wait, I can't accelerate everything. That's not convenient or easy enough to do. You have to transfer all the data over to wherever that accelerated node is. We should do this in a general purpose platform. You then are able to do more in that space, not as fast as from a T-flops per watt or perspective, whatever perspective you like to take, as the accelerated node, but the data process, the movement from the memory of the processor out over the network to this other processor with the accelerator, then loading up the accelerator and then processing it, that end-to-end pipeline becomes larger and larger. Now imagine I am, with an end user who's literally scanning my phone across a store to find, I don't know, the strawberry bath bomb that my 6-year-old seems to think is the best thing in the world. I just want to have a quick experience. I just want that to show up for me. So the end user experiences that we're trying to create are not just about speed, it's about latency to an end user experience. And I think that's really where you see general purpose computing say, okay, we're going to accelerate those kinds of functions that happen all the time. So I won't spend as much time on that, and maybe let's jump into one of our examples of where we've used this. So, I already mentioned cryptography. This was a project, such a great project, where we basically went through TLS. I already mentioned SSL, but TLS, obviously, also an incredibly important web server security standard that is used in a lot of different capabilities, Nginx being one of the most important. And again, when you're able to increase your throughput in performance for encryption by 4x, we get a net increase, 4.2x for end user workloads like Nginx. We see the same sort of thing with vector packet processing. IPsec, also incredibly important, usually more for north-south traffic in the data center, but certainly that is another domain space where we were able to get significantly higher packet process per second for VPNs, so virtual private networks that were happening within the data center. And these are the spaces where, again, you work on this little thing, you have an RTL model and you're running a simulation on it, you have no idea how it's going to operate at scale. But as you go into a scale solution, you really see the end-to-end workloads and pipelines operating. This is where simple little things that you do in this many gates can have a massive impact on an end user experience. Oh gosh, I see so many questions and I want to answer them all. Okay, I'll hit one more maybe, which is in the domain space of deep learning, machine learning, artificial intelligence. All of these get conflated, obviously very different algorithms within them, but fundamentally, these are not new concepts, right? This is using our processor to infer or to train on data what should happen, what we should be recognizing out of a pattern, as opposed to a heuristical model, which is more the traditional machine learning model. In this space, we were able to, again, when we say AI workloads, this probably doesn't mean much to you, but a lot of these are natural language processing workloads. Many of them are in the domain space of, looking at image processing, creating an avatar off of a picture so that you can have a cool interactive solution when you're operating on the web. And again, building into a general purpose processor, acceleration for this capability, really the net improvement is the overall user experience. My favorite example is probably recommendation systems. I don't know that that's known, sort of as a broad statement, but recommendation systems, when you log into, Amazon or anything to make a purchase, you go into, obviously, rendering it on to you, knows who you are, knows who your preferences are. That is actually a recommendation system. As soon as you put in I want to buy, I need a good example. I want to buy a book, right? My kid's really into sci-fi fantasy books. So I want to buy a sci-fi fantasy book that's appropriate for a child. That is looking at your previous behaviors. That is a recommendation system that is returning a result to you. And that flow is the database lookup of who you are, what your previous purchases have been, and then inferencing from that on a model, what should be served to you as a user, most likely. That is a flow that you will spend as much time accessing your data as doing the inference. And this is where speeding up a general purpose processor so that you can do all of that work on one node versus going over the network and having to transfer the data can be very, very exciting. So it's an area that I am, super passionate about, obviously. And again, the more that I see in this industry, the more I realize just changing a library, just using an optimized application, you can get so much more throughput on your specific needs. And it's all about delivering faster time to revenue, queries per second, whatever your metric is as a company to actually deliver at the end. So maybe I already spoke a little bit about the domain space of sustainable data centers and how very much we have a lot of work to do. So as the future of our industry, that's how I view all of you working in computer science and electrical engineering, we have a job to do. It's a serious job. It's not just about, giving you pictures of cats and that might make you laugh on a feed on a social media network. It is literally, meaningfully about changing how the world consumes data in a more efficient and effective manner, holding people accountable to the carbon emissions that they have in the manufacturing process and in the operations of our processors, and extending life of processors and servers in general as best as possible so that we can get more compute capacity over the embedded carbon that we use in those systems. So there's a lot of work to do here. It's true whether it's a cell phone or a PC or a server. We have a lot of work to do in this industry to make sure that we are being responsible citizens. And you'll see a lot from Intel in this domain space. I'm very proud of what we're doing, but you will see a lot from the overall industry as I think all of us really care about seeing this change. So I'll just end a little bit so that we have some time for Q&A on, this journey of life. I don't think I could tell you definitively that I knew I certainly didn't know at 10 what I wanted to be when I grew up, or I would have said dancer, and that was definitely not what I do, although I do it quite a lot in my kitchen with my children these days. I think the most important thing in my journey has been being true to myself, stepping back, taking stock of what matters for people, what matters to me personally, what matters to the people who matter to me. And that is really, I never would have, at 18 when I started college, I would have told you I was so overwhelmed. And when I achieved a senior PE, leadership position at Intel and went through the process of patents and publications and everything that you must do to prove that you are having impact in the industry as a technical leader, I've never been more proud of a single thing I've done. When Fortune's 40 under 40 reached out and said, hey, we're going to feature you as one of the young leaders in technology, I honestly couldn't, I was like, me? Okay, let's talk about it. Let's talk about it. Not because I wanted that or even ever thought about it, but because I am truly passionate about improving end user experiences and stitching that into technology as deeply to the silicon as possible so that we can make the world a better place. And that is why I've been lucky in those domain spaces. And when I think about OCP, the Open Compute Project is about creating efficiencies in the ecosystem together, using the power of community to make servers better, cheaper, faster, run longer, all the things that we need to do and more efficiently so that we can have a better Earth. And the titans of the industry, when Andy Bechtelstein speaks or Mark Roenick or anybody else, I still have fangirl moments of just like, you are amazing humans. I am so grateful to be here. Never lose that, and never pretend to be someone you aren't. You will go through plenty, especially if you don't look the same as the people that you work with every day. That doesn't matter. It really doesn't. If you are true to you, you will be your best self, and you will do the best things for your journey. So when I was thinking about this talk and reflecting on my journey, my thoughts really were, be you. Nobody else can do it as well as you can. So make it happen. Reach out to people, build your sponsorship. If you are more introverted, if you don't see people who look like you, sometimes you won't do that. You have to. Nobody is going to toot the horn for you. So, reach out, ask for help, ask for coaching, take criticism, listen, and then bring your empathy. The more that you listen to people, the more you will learn, the better you will be. And your goal should be to be a better you every day. So I'll end on a quote from Simone Biles, who speak about a person who was underestimated for who she was. Go out there and prove what I can do. That's taught me a lot about who I am. That is who you can be every day, and never forget it. Thank you so much. I would love to take your questions.
Thank you so much. I think it was a pleasure hearing about your journey to VP and your many accomplishments in the industry, along with learning about the future of cloud computing. So I think since we have like around 20 minutes, first we'll do a quick few questions that we've prepared for you, and then we'll open it up to the audience. So audience, feel free to throw in questions in the chat. Thank you so much once again, Rebecca. So to start off, can you tell us what you're most excited about when it comes to the 3rd gen Intel Xeon Scalable Processors release?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely talked about 2 of those features, right? DL Boost as well as our crypto acceleration. I think another domain space that I'm excited about is software guard extensions. This is a solution that basically is a trusted execution environment. Why do trusted execution environments matter? Well, fundamentally, if we don't encrypt a region of memory, anybody within the system could, in theory, read that. So the more that we can expose to applications their ability to encrypt a section and keep that data to themselves, the better. And you can think through a million, well, you probably can. I certainly can think through a million pathological situations. That's one of the joys of having been a verification engineer for a long time. It's kind of like, what possibly could go wrong all the time? Okay, let's build a plan for it and how to test that. So when I think about software guard extensions, trusted execution environments, it really is about, okay, let's say I'm doing a key service. I want to encrypt my keys, and I want to be the only person who knows those keys are encrypted. Then I can do a trusted key exchange and actually ensure that it has stayed consistent. When I think about honestly, records being subpoenaed, if you as a cloud service provider only contain pointers to different users on a system, but the users themselves are the only people who can unencrypt their data. Now, sure, the government can take that information. They have a right to that information, but without your key, which is stored and encrypted by you, they don't actually know what to do with that information. So privacy for users, the ability to be a conscientious objector in society and still be secure, these are the kinds of trusted capabilities in hardware that we can start to use. And again, I hope we all are blessed enough to live in a country where we don't have to worry about those things, but we all know that's not always the case. And so the more that we can enable ourselves to have real security hardened in the platform, hardened in the silicon even, the better, frankly.
I think
the power in the hands of users.
I think that's
the power in the hands of the users.
I think that's really exciting to hear, even as a user. And now kind of tying back, Rebecca, into your leadership style, because you've mentioned a lot about, the various positions you hold. How would you describe your leadership style? And personally, what to you is the most important leadership skill you have learned over the years?
So probably my leadership style is probably servant leadership. I hope that came across. I don't know if it did. Every single day, I view my job in running my team as taking barriers out of their way to be more successful. We are successful when every individual is successful. So I serve my team. They don't serve me. And I think that is true. I think that is true whether, by the way, leadership is not just being a manager. Leadership is how you show up every day. So I feel that is true in my family. I feel that is true in my work. That is true for my customers. I am there, to be able to make a situation better. That is me at my best self. That's when I feel best. And that's when I feel like a best leader. So I always come back to authenticity. Who are you? What do you do well? And I really come to most situations trying to listen first and then work and strive to do what's right for my partner and my team and everybody I get to work with.
Wow, I think that's definitely a really interesting approach and something we can all learn from. And tying it back to, your leadership, but you mentioned a lot about how important your family and your kids are. So holding not only, the role as VP, but senior PE and being on the board for OCP, you're also a mom. So how do you maintain work-life balance?
Well, I'm almost shocked they haven't run in the last, I don't know, whatever it's been, 30 minutes. It's a balancing act. Nobody balances everything all the time. Mm-hmm. So I have goals. I always have goals. My goals are 8 hours of sleep, at least 30 minutes of exercise, and always having dinner with my family. And I don't always achieve those goals, but I try and have them as a fundamental part of myself. I also use all sorts of tropes and tricks to kind of game myself to try and make sure I'm doing the right things. I have a monthly one-on-one with myself that I try and schedule, and it has like a running list of what did I set for my goals for that last month. And I sit down for those 30 minutes as if I was working with somebody on my team, and I go, okay, how do we do on our goals? Not so well. We can do better. You'll never improve if you don't sit back and reflect. So I spend a lot of time, the time that I can, really trying to question, what did I do with that? Was I happy? Did it actually achieve what I was going for? Was I being more reactive or proactive? How could I do it better next time so that I actually achieve what I wanted to achieve? And there's always room for improvement, but we celebrate progress over perfection.
I think we have more questions we've prepared. Yeah. I think the audience is really excited to ask questions. So I will introduce Nanar. Thank you so much, Rebecca. Nanar, do you want to ask some questions that we've collected from the audience?
Yeah, sorry, give me 1 second. All right, hello, thank you so much for your speech. It was honestly the most inspiring thing I've ever heard. We do have a couple of questions from the audience. Laura wants to know, as a strong engineer, what choices did you make towards being a VP versus remaining as an individual contributor?
Oh, it was a really hard journey. And I went back and forth. And I think I mentioned that, I became a manager at Synopsys. And then I went back to an individual contributor role because where I was in my life, I had a small child. I wanted to have a little bit more flexibility. And I felt that I could do that as an individual contributor better than I could as a manager. As a manager, you have to be there for your team. Mm-hmm. And then I went back to being manager later. I still remember my first year where I was going up for senior PE and a manager, which is not a typical combo. Mm-hmm. And my team had worked on an analysis and I had contributed to that analysis and I was taking it to the next level. And the next level of presentation. And I realized I was still trying to know everything as well as my team. Mm-hmm. And that was because I was still trying to be a full, contributor on the technical ladder, and I had patents I had to write and other things I had to do. And then I had one of those one-on-ones with myself of trying to figure out what I wanted. And I had fought so hard, and I'm sure many of you can relate, to get my technical degree, to stay as an engineer, to work in that field, despite quite a few suboptimal situations that I won't bother to talk about, but I'm sure many of you will go through them early in your career. And I'm sorry up front, and just don't even give those people the light of day. And, I had to be so strong when people were like, oh, I heard you were a dancer. You want to come dance on the table? We're at work, people. Like, this is a work environment. Get your act together. I don't talk about things like that here, and you certainly shouldn't. Finding your voice, looking different, all those other moments that I had to work through, and I think that many of us will have to work through, and it's just unacceptable. So I had fought that hard. I'd gotten that degree, and it was a part of my core identity to be an engineer. It is still a part of my core identity to be an engineer. And this last transition, which was really the transition that helped me get to VP, my boss broke it down really easily. And I give him full credit. He was like, Rebecca, we've interviewed like 50 people. Would you really want your business partner to be any of those people? And I thought about it, and I thought about the end experience for my customers and how passionately I want to make their experience be better. And I thought about any of those other folks running the business, and I said, oh no, I guess I gotta go do this. And I don't regret it for a second, because there are so many things you learn on that side of the shop too. There's a fantastic talk that Sheila Glazer, who is was our financial controller, who's now just become the CFO at Zendesk. So proud of her. Talks, which is think like an owner. This is honestly something everybody should do, regardless if you're an engineer, regardless if you're running a business, is thinking about the value you create for an experience, and then how to deliver that most efficiently and effectively so that every boat rises. I think what you learn on the business side of the house is a lot more about not just statistics, but value. And that's been an interesting journey as well, because in the end, what I care about is helping people. So it feels authentic, even though it was a hard thing to let go of from an identity perspective. And I will still geek out on every single thing I possibly can. And I'm that obnoxious executive who's like, I'm sorry, I don't get it yet. I'm gonna ask you another question. And we're gonna keep going until I fully feel like I understand what you're trying to say to me. So.
Thank you so much. We also have a question from Hayden. What would you say is the best way to maximize my 4 years in university as an incoming freshman? And this kind of ties into Paul's question as well. How do you maintain and build connections in your career as well?
Yeah, so getting the most out of college, oh my gosh. Take every real world experience you can. Take the internships, take the, we had Europs in my college, which was, these kind of paid projects within different departments within the university. Every time you can get your hands on real code and real work, it is so important to anchor your education in that experience. I say that as an experiential learner. I personally learn more and better working on a real problem than reading theory. And, I think I won't overstate here, because it's my personal opinion as opposed to a detailed and reasoned analysis, but a lot of computer science is very theoretical. I mean, one of my first projects in computer science was writing a compiler in Lisp for Lisp. It was not a fun project. It is a very theoretical project. It was a very, very good project. I learned a lot about how compilers work, but fundamentally, that doesn't help me solve someone's problem. And I work a lot harder solving problems for other people. That's why I came to engineering. So this comes back to being you, finding your authentic self, finding what motivates you. I have always been much more motivated doing those internships. And that's also where I found my passion for the career. I didn't find passion in reading a textbook. I'm sorry, I had amazing professors and I feel like I should have, but I didn't. I found my passion solving problems. That's what's amazing about engineering. So in your 4 years, find as many real world experiences. Love those project classes. Sign up for the labs. Yes, they're hard. It's all for the right reasons. And that's the closest thing you're going to get to your real life experience, working with other people, doing that work together to deliver an end product. So I would definitely recommend that. The other question, keep me honest, was around sponsorship and mentorship and connections at work.
Yes, maintaining and building connections in your career.
Yeah, and honestly, it's so much harder when you never get to leave your office at home. But this is where remote work, I think, unfortunately, is making things a little bit harder. You need to connect with people. You do need to connect with people. You need to take that extra time to grab dinner with your colleagues after work, to go on that trip, and come down, even though maybe you would like a little bit more sleep or, whatever. And you do need to have FaceTime with people. Technology is helping us, I think, through Zoom and other things to get more connection, even though we are remote. But find those common ground areas. And it may be things you don't expect. It may not be social media, but it may be doing a hiking club together, or doing Peloton together, or something odd that you never really would have thought was like the things you shared with your colleagues. And then the last thing I would recommend, personal, is don't forget the people you knew. I've seen this happen far too often where, you go to a job, you connect with people in that domain space, and then you move to your next job and they never talk to you again. This is very contrary to my personality, because if I like you, I like you. Like, it's not a joke. So, just because I don't see you every day anymore because of work doesn't mean you don't still matter to me. So, there's lots of tools, whether it's LinkedIn or others, that can help you still have some authentic connection to those folks that you don't see every day. But the world of technology is very small. I mean, it is small. And you will meet those people again, and you will interact with them again. And your true belief in the value of who they are should come through.
Thank you so much. We might have time for around one more question. This one's from TJ. He's asking, what experience would you say contributed the most to your development as a leader?
Failures. Always. I would say what experience contributed most to my growth as an engineer, my growth as a human, my growth as a parent, has been all the times I failed. So don't be afraid of them. That's actually where we get better. I can think of a time when, again, it was earlier in my career as a manager, where I lost a person. I was not able to retain them. And as I was doing his exit interview and hearing his experience, there were so many opportunities I had as a manager to help him grow and learn. And it would have been better for my company. It would have been better for him. It would have been better for me. It would have been better for everyone. But I was still early in my journey between understanding my role as an individual contributor, as well as my ability to grow a team. And I was still early in the journey of understanding some of the political, challenges that operating at a large company can sometimes create. So, I think those are the moments where, how do you recover? How do you actually improve? Well, you have to separate your emotions of that moment and be there and be present for people, and then come back and reflect. And so best leadership advice, be there, respond, understand, and then break it down for yourself. what did I do? How could I have improved? How could we have had a better outcome? Is that something that's me personally? You know, sometimes it is you personally. Was it something that was organizational? Whatever the factors are, never be afraid to look at them, because that's the only way you're going to get better.
Thank you so much, Rebecca. I know the audience appreciates you answering their questions. Back to you, Seema.
Once again, another really, really big thank you, Rebecca. We appreciate your time. We know you're a busy person. So thank you for coming in to speak with us. Now, for everyone in the audience, it is time for a short 10-minute break before our next speaker, Xin Yin Chen.